All right, guys, today we're going to be breaking down how to run an out route with an inside release and how you guys can push vertical and what it takes at the top of the route and then mainly the three phases of the route, right? So when we take an inside release on an out route, it's very important. Either we could work a throw-by technique. If this DB doesn't get hands, we could just work this technique that we're going to talk about right now. So when we're pushing vertical, we got to make sure that I'm making this DB believe vertical. If I don't get him to believe vertical and I don't get him to turn his hips and run with me, I'm not doing my job. What a lot of guys will do on this is they'll run up and they get to the top of the route and they'll start chopping their steps right here. That's not what we want to do. We want to be able to stay in stride and drop my hips in stride. So you see Sanders does a great job of staying in stride, not preparing for this break. He uses his hips to decelerate himself, right? You want to think of your hips as like when you're in a boat and you're driving, and maybe you drop an anchor and it hits a rock and you got to come to a screeching halt. Or like think of it like a guillotine when you're dropping it down to cut a dude's head off, because it's got to be sudden. You got to drop, and this hip drop is what creates explosion. This is how you get in that drop position to drive out of there, because the lower you, well, not the lower you get your hips, but the more violent you get your hips and you get them into the correct position where you're not leaning back and you're able to drop and be in an explosive position, that accelerates you. Now we want to be able to turn that explosion into acceleration. This is that energy creation at the top of the route. Now we want to think of it as a race back to the sideline, right? So I want to be able to be here. I create some energy and I turn that energy into acceleration, almost like a 40-yard dash. The start, you want to be explosive so you can accelerate for the rest of the next 30 yards of the 40, just like at the top of the route. You want to drop those hips and be violent. Now use my arms and my legs to drive me out of there and run so I can widen this gap with the DB, win the race back to that ball. Is a great route by Sanders. Watch it again, full speed. So again, inside release, make sure I'm pushing vertical, stay in stride, drop the hips, and accelerate off this break. Great route by Sanders.